So this is what I've been thinking about. I want to just share this idea with you that if we look at the expressive arts, there are really 4 different functions. Of course, a lot of them overlap, but this is something, again, you can think about. Like I say, I like to give you different frameworks that you can use and think about. Why would I be doing what I'm doing with this person or group? Where is my focus on helping them experience something in particular through the senses? So I've thought about this one for a while, that there really are these different areas that I focused on. And I think a lot of people that work through expressive arts think this way too in psychotherapy and counseling, but you certainly could think this way in education if you're working in an education setting, community setting, or anything else. You could look at these 4 areas, and they fall into self-regulation. I'll talk about each of these: co-regulation, exploration, and restoration. So they're kind of linear. I mean, it's kind of like you could move through these in that order, or you might pick up on one more than another because that person needed that particular function that in that time frame and whatever the objectives were at that time when working with them. So self-regulation actually is something we're going to focus a little bit on today. And again, I keep coming back to this, and it's one of the foundations for this course. Is it's found pretty much in all the expressive arts, because it's also been well researched that a lot of the expressive arts induce regulation in some way, and a lot of it is physiological. A lot of it is physical. It calms the body down in some way. It reduces the heart rate. It eases our breathing pattern. It may even slow down. There have been studies, I know, particularly in art therapy, slow down certain brain waves. So it decreases anxiety, helps regulate the body in some way. There probably isn't a trauma survivor around that couldn't use this kind of experience. And that's why I think expressive arts, when you contrast it with talk therapy, has a whole lot more advantage, because you're touching senses that can self-regulate. We certainly can use our voice, and I'll probably talk more about this in other sessions, to help people calm down. The way I talk in a certain rhythm and prosody can help people calm down, and therapists and coaches, teachers, all do that with whoever they're working with to help them de-stress, calm down, reduce anxiety. But this is the thing that's been the most researched in all the arts therapies. And particularly in art therapy, there have been a lot of studies about art making, reducing the stress hormones in the body. So cortisol is one of those. So there have been a lot of studies in this area. So this is probably, this is always a place to start. And how do we find out from the person what kind of expressive method is helpful in that way? And for some people, it will be some kind of rhythmic image making. Others, it might be a certain kind of music or sound. And for others, it might be some kind of movement, helps slow down the body and helps them feel self-regulated. So that's the real basic, I think, here again. Co-regulation is working together in a relationship with that person in expressive arts. Now we've been challenged a little bit because that co-regulation has to take place through the screen because of telehealth and because we're in this unique situation of a pandemic and physically distanced. But it's an idea about establishing synchrony. So we're in the same kind of synchronous rhythm together, and how we attune to each other. So again, you can use voice to do that. You can use sound and music to do that. You can use rhythm to do that. There are a lot of different ways in expressive arts. And that, I think, is another important piece of what we do. I'll be saying that, I'm sure, over and over again, is you can have a talk relationship with people, but when you add the senses in to that attunement experience, you're adding this a valued added situation where you're including the senses as a part of the relationship. And you're touching other parts, not just language, which is up here in comprehension. You're touching things that go on in the body. And those subtle things, they're implicit, nonverbal communication between you and that person. So, if we were in real time, this is so much easier. It can be done through the screen, but you can see here, this is an exercise that I do a lot with groups, where playing music and people are drawing together. One person's leading the other two people in this image, but it's this co-regulatory experience where they're listening to some music with a certain kind of rhythm and being together on that piece of paper, just drawing together and creating movement together. I think I have a little film I could show you today of this as well. But, while we're trying again with co-regulation to calm the body down, to create this attunement, the positive attachment and the cohesive relationship is what's really important here, because relationship is another thing that we can focus on. And when we're co-regulating with someone, we're working with that relationship, not only person to person, but person senses. So it's like an experience of, often it's called in the literature, right mind to right mind, because the right side of the brain is more relationship oriented and attuned. So that's what we're trying to do through expressive arts in that sense, in co-regulation. So I hope that makes sense. It's an important concept in what we do. So here's the third one, which is exploration. And in expressive arts therapy, this is what we're really about, is helping people explore in a whole different way outside of words, through movement, through sound, through vocalizations, through enactment, through image making, to lead to the eventual expression of emotion and thoughts. So, a lot of what has been focused on in all the different creative arts therapies has been around this, actually, about how art making and how dancing and how music making and how enactment helps people explore themselves in different ways, right? Because we can talk about something, but if we're exploring it through the senses, we're going to get a different story. We're going to get more of an illuminated narrative, because we're looking at it and feeling it in the body in a different way. So it leads to a different kind of expression of emotions and thoughts. And one of the things I find about this particular function is it's not always important that people have a verbal story in order to recover from trauma. Sometimes this exploration becomes the story, and it's a nonverbal exploration and communication of what happened or what is sensed in the body. And that forms actually the pathway to relief and repair of trauma. So, there's kind of a myth that has circulated for many decades that people need to be able to tell what happened in order to find relief. There are many, many people who can explore through the body, through exploration, through the senses, and come up with a nonverbal expression of what's happened and feel relief. So I hope that's something that comes across over the weeks, and that, something to think about as you're exploring too through this. What happens that feels restorative, feels relieving, feels like a repair has occurred without having to say it in words. So I think that's another important piece in why expressive arts therapy is so valuable, I think, in trauma intervention. So this is the last one, because I say this is the ultimate goal in expressive arts therapy, is to help people, and I see this as a therapist, but you could see this as a coach or an educator or wherever your stance is coming from, an arts facilitator, to help people get this restoration of the self. So in other words, this is just one definition. It's to see that individual family, if you're working with a group or family, recover wholeness through a sense of well-being and a sense of resilience, and a sense of being able to be socially engaged with others in a comfortable way. And that's ultimately what restoration is. So, again, I fall back on restoration is a really important concept in trauma work as an ultimate goal, because it restores this capacity for people to be playful and curious. So again, that whole thing about being able to be playful and curious for some people has been something that is not part of their experience when they're feeling traumatic stress. And as we can relieve that traumatic stress through the self-regulation, the co-regulation, and the exploration, it stimulates this use of play and curiosity, and also imagination, to start that way of generating a new way of seeing yourself and being in the world, and reframing what happened, because what happened did happen. We can't erase what our life events have been, but we can start to change them through imagination and revise what's happened in conjunction with that traumatic stress. So I think as that happens, as we help people restore, that's when we start to bring that traumatic stress down. That's when we start to see that repair, and people report that they feel a better quality of life. They feel more pleasure in life, and they feel like they're able to socially engage in positive, very calming, and again, back to that relaxed alertness of being able to be in the here and now and be comfortable with oneself in the world. So I hope this makes sense, because this is one way to think about, okay, what am I doing here? I think this has been my challenge for decades in taking classes and thinking about, where am I headed with all this? And when I think through this pathway, this is one pathway, because we'll talk about others, that this is a really helpful way of thinking, okay, I'm headed towards that restoration for that person, but I